Hi, welcome to ninth part of the um, well end of capitalism and its alternatives lecture. In this part, we will start to look. We will look actually to the Soviet experience as an example of socialist regime. Um, and as a starting point, I would like to. And this lecture is part of the lecture series of Marxian economics, and it is prepared for Middle Technical University Northern Cyprus campus. Well, as a starting point, I would like to talk on the conditions of Russia before 1917. Russia was, at that time, Russian Empire, governed by Tsar, which is a Russian word for Caesar, actually coming from Roman Empire, a title coming from Roman Empire. So the Tsars, the Tsarist Russia, or Russian Empire, was mostly consist of the peasants. So it has some urban, small but still significant urban population, which consists of workers, who increasingly became more organized also, and who were led with some educated, skilled, sometimes called college students or grown-up college students, basically. Uh, but for the peasants, of course, I mean, organization of peasants was almost impossible at that time, since those peasants are spread to whole Russia. In coming days, especially in the war, when peasants and workers come into contact with each other, workers will usually start to see peasants as illiterate people, because at that time, remember also, there is no TV, or there is no even newspapers reaching to most of the villages. So people living in villages don't know on the world beyond the village, and that includes also their knowledge on some modern inventions, even factories, or modern equipment in army is relatively low. Um, and when they go out of the village, the world might be very much a strange word for the villagers. While for workers are more dependent to each other. So in village, and especially when they need to do meet certain needs for themselves, it might be relatively more difficult for them than villages. Although relatively low-income workers still do significant amount of work, necessary work for themselves to survive, like cooking, for example. But still, villagers could have been more self-sufficient than the workers. But usually, I mean, the workers see the peasants as relatively less literate, let me say, not knowing what's happening around the world, what's happening in the world around them. And actually, this creates one of the major. The Russia gives an example of a discussion which will repeat itself again and again in many countries, including in Turkey in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, basically. How can a country with peasant majority population as peasants turn into a socialist country? Is it even possible? Because Marx thought in order to have a social system, you first need to have workers majority, so that and not only workers as majority, but also sufficiently organized, so that they can take over the means of production. Even if we apply the Marxian view to a single country, Russia seems a problematic country. But then, so are many other countries like Russia, for example, China, where at the time of revolution there are mostly peasants, or Cuba, or Yugoslavia, or Vietnam. Almost all countries where revolution has happened through internal dynamics, especially even semi-internal dynamics, or even where there was significant struggle for revolution, which was at the end defeated, for example, Greece, you have majority of the population is usually peasants. You have small minority and significant minority of workers in all of these countries, and that minority is to some extent also influenced by the socialist parties, basically radical left parties. But well, their actual power in the whole country was relatively more limited. The workers and also radical wing parties. And in the first elections of Russia after 1905, actually, the Tsarist extreme right party had more than 50% of the vote, and that was 12 years before the revolution, actually. The Tsarist party has the most of the vote, and then you had cadets, which were actually pro-capitalist system, free market. They wanted to bring a free market to the Russia, and they think this is the best possible system for the Russia. So cadets, they got the from the remaining vote, they got the 25% of the vote, and the rest of the 25% was distributed through the more radical parties. You had Communist Party as one block, and then you had SRs. Then Communist Party had divided into two different segments: Bolsheviks and Mensheviks. Bolsheviks means majority, Mensheviks means minority, although Mensheviks were more powerful for a long time. They were called Mensheviks and Bolsheviks because at the initial division, at a relatively small scale executive board, I believe, the Bolsheviks were majority, but in general, Bolsheviks had more members at first, and certainly were more powerful. And Mensheviks were actually kind of following the line of Marx. They think in a country like Russia, where peasants were majority, it wasn't possible to start a socialist revolution. So the party should first follow up and kind of encourage transformations. It should transform feudal system in the Russia to a capitalist system. While SRs, which was a different party, completely a different party, they thought actually socialism could be founded in Russia in a different way. Basically, they look to the peasants and they see they are self-sufficient and they are living in villages in kind of commune-like structures where basically there was cooperation between the members of the villagers in many different ways. We have seen those reciprocity and how villagers cooperate with each other in villages. And the SRs argue that cooperation, degree of that cooperation, could be increased, and then later it could be enlarged and made different villages in an area could cooperate with each other with the encouragement and with coordination of SR parties, which was called Socialist Revolutionaries, and then a larger area, maybe everyone, all villages in province might cooperate with each other, again with the encouragement and organization of SR. In a way, a cooperative economic system can spread to whole Soviet Russia, and that level of cooperation might increase in time. Maybe even villagers might build factories in certain centers with funds or labor pooled, basically, to do that. They might choose certain people from each village to build that factory and run that factory. And in the end, by extending that cooperation of villagers, you might have a social system. Well, we are left with Bolsheviks. Bolsheviks were thinking you could build a social system, but that social system could be built by a vanguard party, which was actually which can lead the workers, at a time of crisis and show them the way to how to basically take over the economic system and run the economic system later. And the leader of the party, Lenin, was taught actually, even though the Russia was in general a peasant country, actually the peasants were also in many ways oppressed by the landlords, and they were also exploited. So a small organized labor class led by Bolsheviks might very well build alliances with the large peasant class, and they might actually work together to transform the economic system of the Soviet Union to a system, to a socialist system, where basically both peasants, workers together, they form a new economic system which is run by basically not by directly necessarily by peasants and the workers, but by the vanguard party, the party that is kind of leading them, that takes the power in the name of them and serves their interests. So now you have a party which gains maybe the trust of the workers and the peasants, the two classes, and then it transforms the economic system, and it organizes and transforms also the peasant class and the workers class within this while it was transforming the economic system. Kind of it gets the leadership of these two classes at the time of crisis, and once it gets the leadership in the name of these two classes, it makes those transformations itself, the party, I believe. I mean the Bolshevik party. So in that sense, maybe you don't need that much of an organized workers, labor class and the peasant class. A party might, in time, an organized party, which has support of a sufficient level of workers, can in time very well gain sufficient power to first take over the economic system and then transform it. And when the time comes when it becomes sufficiently powerful, also organize those classes by itself. So the transformation of peasant class to the worker class was not necessary, as long as you have a strong enough vanguard party. So pretty much the level of political organization can make it possible for a country to start the transformation from actually feudalism to all the way to socialism at a very early era, without even a capitalist system in between. So pretty much basically your power and degree and speed of transformation depends on this political organizational level, basically, according to Lenin. So if you are, as I said, sufficiently organized, then basically that organization can easily transform also the feudal system to the capitalist system. Well, Lenin was kind of inventor of this famous the hammer and the sickle. Sickle is symbolizing the peasants and the hammer the workers. So workers and peasants united, basically. That means that, although according to them, Marx, basically, mainly the workers are the revolutionary class, basically, and Bolshevik Party in many ways kind of its main support still was based on workers in most cases, although SRs were more kind of pro-peasants. The relations with peasants in Russia was more developed. Well, in 1917, there was a spontaneous revolution in St. Petersburg, and that was actually not led by any party. But in time, different parties were trying to take control of the system. Initially, Mensheviks actually were able to form a government with alliance of different parties, including cadets and also some other left-wing parties. But in time, well, basically, let me talk on this in the coming parts. See you in the next part.